Hello everybody and welcome to this week's Business Tax Update, where we talk to you about all the news and rumours that affect you, the small business owner. So the first bit of news this week is that the PAYE tax coding notices are out. So if you're employed, for example, in a job, or let's say you're a director of a limited company, so you're on a payroll somewhere, the chances are you would have already started to receive your payroll notice. So HMRC have been sending these out. At this present moment, they're technically temporary because until the budget has happened on the 11th of March, we don't know if the rates and allowances and everything are fixed. So they are subject to being revised, but at the moment you might notice they're coming out. The main thing with this is to check that you're happy with everything that's been adjusted. If you've got a standard tax code, if it comes in, it just says, 1250L or something along those lines, then it's probably fine, there's nothing doing. But if you see that they've taken things out of your code or added things in, you want to make sure they're right, because realistically, most of the time to change that, it's just a quick call to HMRC to say, this is wrong, can you take this out, and here are the reasons why. If you've got an accountant, get them to check it, they'll do all that for you, but if you are doing it solo, just make sure you're happy with that, because it can cause you problems later. One of the areas particularly to look for is in the area of cars. So if you've got a taxable benefit for a car that you had last year, and maybe it was only halfway through the year or something like that, see if it's enough. Quite often they're the ones where we see that they get them wrong. Same with medical insurance and some of these other key benefits, so just make sure to check that out. And if there is a problem, do give them a bell. It's very, very easy to sort out on the majority of occasions. But as I say, if you're getting some professional help, let them do it for you. If you're really interested in how your tax code works and made up and you haven't really seen it, I know when I was employed as an individual, I didn't have a clue how it all worked. There's actually a blog on our website that explains that to you, so go and check that out. Now, the next interesting thing in the news this week is we always keep an eye on the tax courts. So this is really where the rules are made. So I think a lot of people presume that with tax, there's a rule book, says here's the stuff you can do, here's the stuff you can't do, but actually it's not really the case. There is a little bit of that, but the majority of the actual specifics come from interpretation of what happens in the tax courts. So in this particular case, there's been an interesting case that was heard this week, and that was Toucan Box. So this is a kids craft company, boxes with sort of some reading material and then some craft materials in a box for children, sort of, I think it's in that 3 to 8 sort of age range. And what happened is they got slapped with a 600 odd K VAT bill from the tax man. They said, we think you owe us this amount of money, and it's been going through the courts. And the reason that is that VAT can be quite complex, and in this particular case, that parcel they sent that had some reading material and some craft materials are two different things for VAT reasons. The craft materials are what they call standard rated, which is the normal 20% VAT that you pay on a lot of goods and services, and magazines, printed material like that, is generally what they call zero rated. It just means there's no VAT on it, but there's technically different, it's technically a VATable service, but the rate's zero. So this is all important for different reasons, but really if you just think about it, one's got VAT on, one hasn't really. It went through, and what they did was, so the Toucan Box went, okay, fine, we've worked out a fair apportionment between the VATable bit and the non-VATable bit, and therefore what we're going to do is we're going to hand over this amount of VAT on the money we've received. And that's quite normal and seems reasonable to me and to a lot of other people, I think, that were looking at this case closely, but HMRC disagreed and said that actually they felt the magazine was almost immaterial, like a tiny bit of the overall package, and therefore they should have VAT on the whole amount. And we've seen this historically in a few cases before where people have tried to be quite clever with this, but in this case it seemed pretty straightforward to the onlooking eye that actually it was fine as it was. They actually won their appeal and HMRC lost, and the reason really that was able to happen was because they were able to prove that customers saw the reading material, the magazine in this particular case, as really something quite important or very important to the actual overall product. And the reason I use those words in little bunny ears is how they're able to prove is they actually used a customer survey they ran, and 91% of their customers felt that it was important or very important, which is a really key piece to this. So great news for them, and also for common sense by the looks of it. So that's the latest thing that was in the courts. The reason I picked this one is it's a takeaway really to say that VAT is so complex, especially with mixed rates and things like that going on. So if you run in a business where that's the case, it's always worth getting a professional opinion, mainly because HMRC are prone to deciding themselves what they're going to do. And if you phoned HMRC's helpline, all they would normally do is they won't give you an opinion that you can rely on. They'll just point you to an area in the guidance, which is kind of helpful, but it really doesn't give you that certainty that you want. So yeah, definitely check that one out if you're in that sort of situation. And then finally, as news was fairly quiet this week as we moved towards the budget, I wanted to highlight an area of tax that not a lot of people know about, and that's the DIY self-billed VAT scheme. What this is all about means if you build yourself a new residential property, there's another couple of things like conversions and things you can do, but let's just keep it quite simple. The chances are you'll be able to reclaim the VAT you incurred on the building costs. The idea of the scheme is it puts you into a similar place to somebody who's a building company or a developer that's doing the same sort of thing. And what you're able to do is after you've done the build, you can submit a form with all your expenditure and receipts, and they'll actually repay you the VAT on it, presuming that all your paperwork's in good order. We actually did this recently a couple of times for clients, and both times it's very, very straightforward. So if you are doing this, make sure that you keep all your records, make sure that you've read the guidance and kept all your paperwork in exactly the right sort of order and presented it in an easy to understand manner, and you should be able to get that back. There's quite a lot of guidance on that, and I'll put some links in the video or the comment section so that you can go there and have a read if you want to do that. The thing to be aware with it is there's some quite restrictive timescales. You've got to do it quite quickly after completion, so just make sure that you've got it all ready as your build goes on, really, and that all your VAT paperwork is there, because one of the things we found internally when we've done these is that the tax man can be quite picky over receipts and it being in the right names and saying the right things on it, because they do get inspected, so just check that out. But it is a really I don't know, it's one of those areas of tax that not many people know about, bizarrely. So yeah, there you go. If you're building a house, VAT reclaim there for you. And that's it. Not a lot happening this week, so hopefully that's kept you up to date and you've learned something along the way. We'll see you on the next one.